If you're a Biggie fan looking for context, I am so sorry. This is talking about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Now, the stand Notorious B.I.G. has one of those unreasonable levels of strength where you wonder, what can you really do about this? It starts with Postmortem Activation. Notorious B.I.G. is a unique stand in JoJo due to its ability to activate and persist even after its user, Carne, is deceased. Now, this activation draws energy from Carne's grudge, allowing the stand to bypass the common dependency on a living user. After Carne's death, Notorious B.I.G. initially lacks a physical body, but it can construct one by absorbing matter and energy from external sources. Now, although this newly formed body can still suffer physical damage, such as impacts or impalements, any remnants of the stand remain active and capable of regeneration, make it a persistingly threatening presence. Well, you might be wondering, well, Caleb, why is that? I will answer you, viewer. After that, there's its energy absorption. The most remarkable ability of Notorious B.I.G. is its capacity to absorb energy, including stand energy and energy from mechanical objects like engines. For some reason, this absorption allows the stand to grow substantially in size, potentially reaching dimensions as large as a jet plane. A critical aspect of this ability is that even a tiny fragment of Notorious B.I.G. can recover from near total destruction as long as it has access to a source of energy. This capability makes this stand virtually impossible to defeat, as it continuously regenerates and strengthens itself through the energy that it consumes. Now, the stand's proficiency in absorbing stand energy also grants it an immunity to other stand attacks, enabling it to target and feed on them effectively. And lastly, for measure, partial symbiosis. Because it's an early stage of growth, Notorious B.I.G. exhibits a form of partial symbiosis, influencing its host's actions subconsciously. This was demonstrated when it infected Giorno Giovanna, leading him to perform tasks unwittingly, such as preserving parts of Carne and expressing thoughts through writing. This symbiotic interaction further underlines the stand's insidious and invasive nature, manipulating physical actions and exerting control without the host's awareness. Now, the process of Notorious B.I.G. still requires initial contact with the remains of its user, Carne. This prerequisite catalyzes the following activation and manifestation of the stand's abilities. The absorption of the stand energy by Notorious B.I.G. implies that any contact, whether physical or even through a stand, potentially contributes to its activation and its growth. So, encountering Big often leads to an irreversible series of events where the stand begins to form and adapt like an infection that is beyond conventional removal methods. We'll be looking at this large issue by imagining a scenario with Jotaro Kujo and his stand, Star Platinum. A Star Platinum is known for its precision and strength, usually overpowers enemies through sheer force, but in the case of Big, this approach would most likely be counterproductive, because the aggressive and forceful actions of Star Platinum would inadvertently empower Notorious B.I.G., feeding it into its strength and resilience. Now, Jotaro would have to completely change up his game plan, like in the fight against Yellow Temperance, forcing him to rely more on strategy rather than his physical prowess. Along with that, the threat of Big's partial symbiosis ability adds an additional layer of complexity, as it could manipulate Jotaro's actions subconsciously, further complicating the whole battle. I think even without the infection itself, and let's just say that it's pursuing anyone moving, I'd still have this stand over most, because, for example, Jotaro and Dio have no real way of getting rid of this stand. And then there's after these two. Let's look to Josuke and Yoshikage Kira. Josuke's stand, Crazy Diamond, with its restorative powers, might unfortunately offer a type of energy that the Notorious B.I.G. could absorb. And I know that we've considered a stand's energy and life force alongside the biological user, but technically speaking, we haven't really differentiated that. A stand's life force and the energy that it produces could definitely be the same thing, which it probably is. Especially considering that when Dio got a boost in power and life from drinking Joseph's blood, he gained a longer time stop. So we've actually also already been told that Notorious B.I.G. is immune to stand attacks in general, but I'm really trying to get this point across even further because stand attacks is fairly general. Now grabbing Kira, for another example, not only would we have to worry about being detected by Big, trying to turn the stand into a bomb could potentially not work for two reasons. Reason one is absorbing the explosive energy, if that's even possible. And the second reason is that he wouldn't be able to do it without moving, which will get him tracked. It's also a stand that exists in fragments and regenerates, so even if you do get some of it, that doesn't mean you got all of it. And using something like sheer heart attack would spread more of this stand everywhere, giving more of a chance of grabbing Kira and ending the fight there. And what's to say about characters outside of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure? Imagine this, the Notorious B.I.G. that was left on the Tyranian Sea versus insert character here. Non-stand users already can't see stands. Normally, they aren't tangible to non-stand users either, but I don't think this stand has the ability or brain power to phase through objects, and that's why it's able to get affected by physical damage since it's in a constant state of feeding. But maybe it's just the case that you can just hit it just cuz. If it could, it wouldn't have as much difficulties as it did on the plane, but it did. So to win, you have to at least survive or somehow acknowledge the threat without getting caught and trick it into some sort of trap that will completely disable it. Or you could completely wipe it off the face of the earth. But unless you're capable of the last one, I think escape is truly the only option. And actually, Notorious B.I.G. can pull energy from an engine, so it's not necessarily limited to biological energy or a stand's life force. If Big can absorb all types of energy in general, then honestly speaking, what are you supposed to do? Like really, what are you supposed to do? It's a bit of headcanon because we've only seen this stand in one fight, but we've also seen a couple of stands in only one fight, and we give a lot of support to them, so I'm just trying to be fair here. Now, this stand doesn't come without its weaknesses, though. It's just that even in its initial interaction with Big, you could just lose out the gate, and that's why I'm supporting it so much. But what does this lose to? Well, Big is blind and detects by movement. It's an extremely straightforward stand, and all you have to do is have the facilities to not lose in the first interaction. And after that, you leave, because I don't think you're capable of fighting this thing outright. It's currently confusing itself with the motion of the ocean, so you won't have to worry about outthinking it too much once you know that it exists. But with Big having such an important first interaction with its opponent, I do think it should get fairly far in fights, because assessment can only truly happen once it's already started to get going. When it comes down to it, I do think that Notorious B.I.G. has to be considered a strong stand altogether. It just has certain matchups that it would lose for sure. For example, we have reason to believe that it can come out of a fight against Jotaro and Dio fairly easily, but would probably get itself destroyed against Vanilla Ice. King Crimson can beat an enormous amount of stands and stand users in a 1v1 scenario, but Big isn't one of them properly. You see how odd that all is? And I understand that the steps taken here give the stand a lot more to work with and get it further out than others. But even if the scenario is Carne where he's fine, and or it's the version that's left out to the sea, I think that Notorious B.I.G. could find itself in top 15 at the regular, and even top 10 if we're truly giving it the most amount of support and highballing it. I just think that there'd be a lot of error that we'd be dealing with when talking about this stand because of the fact that it doesn't really have that much information to establish a clear basis. The only thing that we really need to know is how would it take an energy blast, for example? If it could absorb energy from an engine, who's to say that it stops there? Plus, that's a very large fact to me. I just know that there would be someone who'd probably like to argue, considering that there are a lot of stipulations that you could put on this feat, which is fair. What a character is capable of should always be put into question if you're truly determined on power scaling it. So I'd be fine if people were to think about how to approach a powerful stand like this. But if you also have another stand that you think is broken but doesn't get enough shine that it deserves, you can run it up in the comments and I'll be sure to check it out. Thank you all for watching, and Godspeed.